Today I'm doing the Big Books Phobia Tag, which a bunch of people have been doing on BookTube lately. Looks like a lot of fun, so I wanted to do it too. The rules are you pick 5 books that are over 500 pages long, and you just talk about why you're scared to read them. And then between showing those 5 books, you show 5 short books, so that's 300 pages or less, and you talk about something that you liked about them. And then you go back and forth showing a long book and a short book. My first long book is Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. This book is 1,463 pages, and I'm terrified to read it. I have a really deep relationship with Les Mis, the show. It was one of the first shows that I ever saw on Broadway when I was 10, and I didn't understand anything, but I was just so in love with the music. And then 3 years later I saw it again with my class, and I loved the story, and I just found it so heartbreaking. And ever since then I've been wanting to read the book. Obviously they're not the same thing, but going to see the musical was what made me want to read the book. I bought it at least 5 years ago, but every time I look at it on my shelf I'm just like, ah! Oh, it's so long. I don't know how I'm gonna muster up the courage to read it. My first short book is The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls. This book is 288 pages, and it's a memoir about Jeanette Walls' childhood. She grew up with a really dysfunctional family. I can't even describe her parents. It's basically a story of a childhood where she and her siblings had to fend for themselves. There's so many insane situations in this book I can't even begin to describe, but it was utterly captivating from beginning to end. One thing that I really need in a memoir normally is not just telling me the events that happened to you, but having some sort of reflection or just discussion of how all these events made you feel at the time. There's not a lot of that in here. Jeanette Walls is a journalist, and it shows. It's told in a very almost removed way, and I did not mind that at all. It's one of its strengths and not its weaknesses, that she didn't turn this into a pity party. Look at how horrible my childhood was. Feel sorry for me, my parents are villains. She didn't do any of that. She just told us the story of her childhood. I actually really appreciated her for that, because I feel like it's so common with these kinds of memoirs about shitty childhoods to ask for sympathy, I guess. I don't know. That's my cat. Toby! I'm making a video! Yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, she doesn't ask for sympathy, she just tells you the story. I would highly recommend it. If you're looking to get into memoirs, I would say that this is a really good place to start. My next long book is Moby Dick. This edition is 667 pages. That was a close one, Moby Dick. I'm a little offended that this edition looks so small and it doesn't look scary at all, because I've been scared of Moby Dick for like my whole life. Oh, it's so complicated. I'll really want to read it, and then I'm just like, oh, I don't think I can do it, and then I want to read it again. I actually posted a status update on Facebook a few months ago saying something like, I don't think I'm ever gonna read Moby Dick. And out of all the people who commented, half of them were like, no, read it, it's awesome. And then the other half were like, no! So I was left just as confused as I had been before. One of my closest friends absolutely despised it. We texted each other about it. She was trying so hard to convince me not to read it. But I decided to do it because I just need to know for myself. I'm gonna read it in June. That's a fact. It's happening. My next short book is Boy by Roald Dahl. This book is 176 pages, and it's a story of Roald Dahl's childhood. If you were a fan of Matilda or The Witches or any of those books, I would highly recommend it, because it's written in a very similar way. It even has pictures. A lot of them are photographs, but then you also get little drawings. It was charming in exactly the same way as his children's books are charming. They were a big part of my childhood, and I just wanted to read about his childhood, and there's so many connections between the things that he experienced and the things he ended up using in his books. I read it in a hostel in London, and it was my first time in Europe, and I was all by myself, and I was reading it in bed, and the bed it was like, what's it called, those 4 posters? I don't know, it had like a curtain so you can have privacy, and it had a little lamp inside, and I was in there reading it, and I literally cried because I was so happy. And I usually don't cry because I'm so happy I'm reading a book, but Maybe it was also that I was in London and I was like freaking out. But anyway, I really recommend it if you're a fan of his other stuff. My next long book is Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. This one's 807 pages. It's a classic. I have never read any Tolstoy. I've always wanted to read Tolstoy. Not much explanation for this one, but it's long and I'm scared. My next short book is The Hours by Michael Cunningham. This book is 226 pages. This is one of my favorite books of all time. It's actually the book that got me into Virginia Woolf. I watched the movie without knowing that it was a book, and I developed a fascination with Virginia Woolf just from watching the movie. Then I found out it was a book and I decided to read it. But because it's based on Mrs. Dalloway, I had to read that one first, and thus began my relationship with Virginia Woolf's works. It's actually the only book that I own with the movie cover. But hello, Meryl Streep. If I had it my way, she'd be on the cover of all of my books, so don't really think that's a problem for me. Brief synopsis: The Hours follows a day in the lives of three women. Virginia Woolf, who's writing Mrs. Dalloway in the 1920s. Laura Brown, who's a housewife in the 1950s, who is reading Mrs. Dalloway. And Clarissa Vaughn, who is a present-day woman in New York City and is sort of like the modern Mrs. Dalloway. I just thought it was masterfully told. The three stories from three different eras all managed to intertwine by the end of the book, and I need to reread it like right now. It's such a good book. My next long book is Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee by Dee Brown. This book is... it's less than 500 pages. It's 445 pages. Whatever, I'm still gonna count it because it covers a lot. It's nonfiction, it's dense, and I'm just so scared to read it because it's gonna break my heart. I'm just being cowardly. I've owned it for years. I've read some stuff on the Native American genocide, but I've never read a whole book just about that. It's something that I know I have to read because this is our history, but I'm just so scared. It's gonna be so hard to read. But I have to do it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. My next short book is She's Not There, A Life in Two Genders by Jennifer Finley Boylan. It's exactly 300 pages. This tells the story of Boylan's transition from male to female. I'm just going to give you a quick example of something that she talks about. So she is the co-chair of the English department at Colby College. And back when she was presenting herself as a man, she would tell her female students, don't end your sentences as if they're questions. What is that called? Like upspeak, uptalk, something like that? You know how it's common that women ask instead of say something, even when they're introducing themselves. My name is Kathy, like that. It would drive her crazy, and she would tell her female students, don't do that, take ownership of your statements. That's just telling people that you're not confident in what you're saying. Whether you think you're right or wrong, just own it and make the statement with pride. And so that was her thing back when she was presenting as a man. And then she starts going through the whole process leading up to the sex change operation. She starts presenting as a woman. Her sex and gender finally match. And she starts noticing that she starts using upspeak, uptalk as well. I just found that so fascinating, and the way that she wrote about it was really cool. Society's influence, even if you've grown up on the other side of the sex spectrum and experiencing such different social expectations, and even if that switches and you're already an adult, it has such a strong pull. I don't know. I can't really articulate it, but I mean, that's fascinating, right? That she, while presenting as a man, had this strong awareness of language and tone and all this knowledge, and yet that still wasn't enough to maintain that voice that she had prior to the operation and undergoing all these changes. I don't know, it was just really cool to read. It's a quick read. I highly recommend it. My last long book, I kind of cheated because it's 3, but it's Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. They total like 1,500 pages. My aunt bought me these books when I was like 10 years old, so it's been a long time that they've been just sitting on my shelf. I'm committing to reading part 1 this year. but I don't know about the rest. But that's happening. It's long. Look at that. Long. Finally, I have a book of poetry. Am I allowed to talk about poetry? I'm just going to do it. It's The Book of Men by Dorian Laux. I love this cover. I think it's beautiful. I actually just tweeted Neil Gaiman today because he said that he was looking for a poem about ordinary people just getting through life, and I sent him one of her poems that's not actually in this book. It's called Dust. I love her, and I don't have the strongest relationship with poetry in general. It's taken me years and years to develop an appreciation of it, but Dorian Laux is one of those people that I think she's a really good poet for people who don't like poetry. She has this obsession with death and with the past, and she writes about it in such a beautiful, compassionate way. Actually, in The Hours, there's a sentence that's like, to look life in the face, and that was something that I have always remembered about The Hours. To look life in the face. I just think that's such a powerful sentence, and Dorian Laux looks life in the face, and in such a gorgeous, gorgeous way. A love song to the imperfections that unite and divide us. So that was my big book phobia tag. Hope you enjoyed. If you have any opinions about any of these, let me know, and I'll see you next time.